Welcome back to the Rock Your Soul podcast. I'm Nicole Eaton, author of the book Rock Your Soul, The Down-to-Earth Guide to Mastering Your Mind and Intuitive Therapist. And I'm here to remind you of your power and that it's absolutely possible to live a life you're obsessed with. Let me show you how. Hey guys, welcome back to the Rock Your Soul podcast. This week's episode is with my favorite guest host, Heather Maio, two-time gym owner, author of Not Another Diet book, and host of the Magic Mindset podcast. This week, we talk about things that may be getting in your way to being truly aligned. And in our full alignment, this is where we get to make better choices, hear our intuition more clearly, and act in alignment with our deepest soul. I hope you're ready. Welcome back, Miss Heather Maio.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I'm always excited to have you. We have the best conversations, and I feel like anybody who's not listening is just missing out.
I do. I love these conversations, and I am not kidding you when I say I listen to every single one back, and I love it even more the second time.
I know. I was like, is that narcissistic that I'm like, these conversations are so good? But I think one of the cool things is that we both use our intuition and kind of channel. And I think that these conversations are supported divinely and that we're getting inspiration and feeding off of the inspiration of each other. And so I think that sometimes I listen to it back and I don't remember even talking about the details of the things that we're talking about. And I think that's like, I don't know. For me, that's God. Like that's how I experience it.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I'll frequently listen back and be like, oh, wow, that's good. And we are very similar in that we think the same, but also I catch us on the same wavelengths a lot, where there's been so many times, which just happened recently, where like you'll post something and I'm like, oh shit, that's in my drafts, or I'll post something and like, I feel like have an energy that's vibrating similar. So yeah, that is God. That's magic.
Yep. I actually messaged Heather the other day. I'm like, I swear I'm not copying you. I made this video like earlier today and you just released the same thing. But you know what? I love that. I think that divine inspiration goes into many channels. And so I think that when you get that divine inspiration, that it doesn't matter like who it's coming through. If it's the same message, like it's just a reminder to the collective that we need this message right now. So if you're seeing a lot of different people who have the same message, it's not a bad thing. It's just a reminder that that's a message that we all need right now.
Absolutely.
Speaking of being a divine, like I'm talking about divine channel, and for everybody who's like, I came here for mindset, and you know, Nicole, this is a little too woo-woo for me already. Like I was thinking about like creativity and being inspired and feeling motivated and how I feel that way when I feel closest to like my own alignment, like when I'm making decisions or acting in a way that feels really good to me. And the more in alignment I am, the more of a channel I am for like receiving inspiration and motivation. And, you know, there are definitely times where I notice that like I can block that or I can get into it. And I know we were talking earlier about like, what are the blocks? Like what lowers your vibration so you not only feel out of alignment, but just like disconnected from like spirit, God, universe, whatever you call it? Like what does alignment like mean to you? I'm curious.
Yeah. So I think you know where I'm going to go with my first one, because it stems from our very first conversation ever. For me, and I truly believe for other people, a huge part of alignment is how we are interacting with our bodies. Because, and again, this is just my belief, but it's my belief that how I interact with my body is kind of going to be the center domino that cascades all the other ones off. And so if that's off, that's when I feel very much out of alignment. And I think sometimes with other people in my work, I work with a lot of women around their nutrition, and we always end up going to a weird place because I am who I am. So it ends up happening, but like specifically with like the spiritual stuff and opening up your crown chakra and receiving divine information, being able to listen to your intuition. And you've talked about this a ton, like you have to be able to feel your body. And when we are in a state where we are not listening to our body, which by default means we're not eating well, we're not caring for ourselves well, we're not drinking enough water, we're not sleeping enough, like all of those things, it just makes it really, really muddy. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it makes it a lot harder, right? Like, just like if we're exhausted, doing daily tasks is harder. Well, if we're not treating our body well, it makes the puddle muddy. It makes it hard to differentiate. Like, well, is that intuition? Is that fear? Is that true hunger? Is that a craving? Like, on a very human level too. So that's, to me, alignment starts with, how am I interacting with my physical being? And everything kind of stems out from there.
I would completely agree. I noticed for me, I've like cleaned up my eating a lot over the past like 7 years. I would say ever since I got more connected with like the divine or universe or God, like the more I spend in that intuitive energy, the more I recognize how like lethargic I get when I eat poorly. I actually just did a podcast episode with a woman who does alcohol-free empowerment. And we were just talking about like the physical biochemical changes that happen when you drink and like just different things that I've been really mindful of like what I'm consuming. And I noticed there's two things that happen. When I'm on. When I'm off, I'm off. And I'm curious if you see this both within yourself and in your clients. But like for me, if I'm out of alignment, like I start to easily do more things to get me out of alignment. Whereas if I'm in alignment, I do more things to keep myself in alignment. So like I have a hard time not being polarizing in that way of like, I'm either in it or I'm out of it. But I've had to like, I know we talk a lot about our morning routines, but I've had to really put in a morning routine, especially around breakfast and making sure I'm eating a good breakfast or making sure I'm not drinking too much coffee, just so that I'm intentionally stepping into my alignment every day so that I can hear my intuition, so that I can feel inspired, so that I can be motivated. But it definitely does matter. Like I do feel like the heavier and harsher the foods that I'm eating, like the crappier I feel. Like it plugs my ability to not only like listen to my intuition, hear it, but also like to believe it exists. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense to me. And to kind of go into the first point of when you feel like you're on, you're off, you're off. And those aren't your words, but you know what I'm saying. And I think that's something a lot of women can relate to. And again, so specifically diet driven, right? It's like that black or white. I am so quote unquote good Monday through Friday, and then the weekend. And we get ourselves kind of into this mindset of like the fuck it effect, right? Well, fuck it. But even on a lot lesser level, if we're just off in general, like, you didn't get a good night's sleep, your morning routine kind of went to shit, or, and I'm sure you have this too. I work with a lot of people who they're like, morning routine. No, what is that? Like, that's no, I don't have time for that. But when you're starting your days kind of in that like very reactive state, it's easy to never be able to, that's what is intention in that state, right? Because you haven't taken time to kind of say, okay, well, what do I have to do today? And again, on the logical level, what are my tasks? Where am I going? What do I need my energy to be like for work, for my kids, for whatever? When we don't have time to do that, it's really easy to see how those dominoes keep going in the direction of just reactivity, of heightened stress, heightened anxiety, because everything is like, well, dealing with it when we get there, versus a more proactive approach of just, taking a couple minutes in the morning. And, for you and I, that's journaling and habit check in of just, okay, this is what I need to do today. And then it kind of, without even too much work, you start just figuring out, like placing in those puzzle pieces without it being this huge, big process. And so it just tips the dominoes in a more, conducive manner.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think there's a lot of things, like subtle things, that mess with your vibration and mess with you feeling supported in a divine way that like people don't talk about. And obviously like eating poorly is one of them. Drinking alcohol was one of them. Smoking marijuana is one of them. Like one of the things Carolina was talking about was that they're actually doing studies with alcohol and just regular consumption, not even over drinking, not alcoholism, not anything. It's putting holes in people's brain, which reform after they cease, consumption. But it's just like wild that there's things that we're doing that are actively changing our brain, that are actively disconnecting us from our highest selves, from hearing like our guidance system. I've been thinking so much lately about decision making. Like that has just been something that keeps coming up for me. I have a lot of decisions to make this week, but I keep like even just opening books and reading about it. And I'm like, okay, so decisions come from like knowing what decision to make comes from your soul, like for me. And so if I was listening to Abraham Hicks this morning. I know a lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it, but I was listening to the thing and she was saying, if you have the question question, you have the answer. The question is, if you have the question, you're ready for the answer. If you're not hearing the answer, then you're resisting what's true. And I was just thinking so much about how when we like weigh ourselves down with fear or doubt or worry or trying to figure it out or heavy foods or consuming too much social media or the news or whatever, like that we actually create more resistance between the question and the answer within ourselves anyway. Like we're like creating this distance between solving our own problems and like owning up for our own shit and changing our lives. Like if we're thinking about changing our lives, and why the hell does vibration even matter? You have to be willing to like go within to recognize there's a problem on a soul level, like know something's not right. But then you also have to have the ability to like truly deeply in your gut hear the answer of like, what is the next right thing? Not just the easy thing, not just the familiar thing, but what is the next right thing for you. And I think that the further away we get from our alignment, the more we lower our vibration, the harder it is to decide anything. And the harder it is, therefore, to change your life. And like, why would we want to do that to ourselves if we could be intentional about getting our vibration to a place where we can not only hear our intuition, but trust it? And I know that's like a big loaded statement I just said, but like, I'm just feeling it in the most genuine way of like, what if with every question we have, we already have the answer and we're just not willing to like hear the truth of it, or we're clouding ourselves to the point where we're disconnected from it?
I think it's both, right? You know, like I really, I can be a little harsh when it comes to especially like alcohol and marijuana, any other substances like that. And again, not because I'm the sober police. I'm not sober. I never want to be sober.
Yeah.
I love a good cocktail just as much as the next girl. It's not any of those things. But when we are going to things to fix our anxiety that are only making our anxiety worse, which is exactly what any sort of numbing agent is going to do, therein lies the problem. And it keeps us stuck in that problem. And specifically, so much and now the research is coming out the same around marijuana. It really is a myopic agent. It is just making the problem worse. And we are in such a culture of just have a drink, have a drink, have a drink. And it's only you're just throwing gasoline on a fire. And that to me is an issue I get really passionate about just because it breaks my heart. Because one, I've been there and I know how shitty it feels, but it's also like, it's one of those situations where you want to take the people you love or a mirror, which has certainly been the case for me, right? Like just shake yourself and go, stop. Like you just stop because, and like you said, when we're in that place, you can't hear it, right? It's just like, when you have a goal, the goal is in your head because it's achievable to you. And the answer, the question is there because the answer is there. You can't change a problem that you're not willing to recognize or take, ownership for. All of these things. It's basically saying the same thing in different ways, and taking away those numbing things from ourselves allow us to just basically create this space and the quiet needed for those answers to bubble up. And not to say that they're just going to instantly, like you'd pass on the White Claw and all of a sudden you hear your higher self step in. Like there's a work and there's a process, but it becomes so much easier, right?
Yeah. I love what you just said. And I do want to reiterate, just because I've had so many people on here talking about sobriety. I am not a sober person.
No.
I am sober curious though. Yeah. And I do really intentionally think about, do I want to drink right now or do I need something else? Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with a casual drink, obviously. Like my conversation with Carolina, when you guys hear that, it's like, holy shit, like what is even the benefit? But I do have kind of like, that's still part of my life to some regard. So I do want to just reiterate that if you're listening to this, like, Nicole, why are you pushing sobriety right now? I just want you to be mindful of the things you're doing, the things you're putting into your body and the ways it's impacting you and your mental health, because we don't talk about the impact of mental health with the foods we're eating. I mean, I just listened to this whole podcast with Ed Millett and Amy Shaw that was brilliant on like the gut microbiome. And it's in a way that's like digestible for somebody who's not not familiar with it, and genuinely actionable tools. Like, so things like that, where I'm like being intentional of like what you're putting in your body and what you're consuming. And like, this is what we're talking about when we're talking about like lowering your vibration, is what are the things that you're taking in? And the other thing that you were just talking about, even with like alcohol or marijuana, is like, and I think about this with social media. Like, I definitely noticed for myself, I've had to put the like iPhone time limits on myself with like social media. And I'll use that under the guise of like, well, as a business owner, I have to be on whatever. I don't. That's fucking bullshit. We don't like, we all know that. But what is it doing? It's filling up space. It's filling up space where I'm not taking time to be with myself and my thoughts, or face any of my shit, or just sit with silence, which is really, really good for ourselves and our brains. Because when we can sit with our silence, we step out of the reactivity and we get into a place where we can think, take a deep breath, and then respond. And I think that that's another great way to hear your intuition, to hear your higher self, to raise your vibration. But if you're filling in the space, whether it's through texting other people, I know I went to a foreign country with this girl, and she was on her phone. She was like FaceTiming and like doing stuff every second of the time we were there. And I was like, we're in Mexico. Like, what are you doing? Like, we're sitting by the pool, we're looking at the ocean, and you're FaceTiming somebody. Like, I was so weirded out, because I'm just like, but some people have programmed themselves to fill up the space so that they're not alone with their thoughts. And if you're never alone with your thoughts, you're in survival mode. Like, if you are never sitting alone with your thoughts, you have no time to create, you have no time to think about what you want. You are just a swirling, reactive little being. Like, there's no intention that can come if you're filling space. So like, the other thing I would say is, we've talked about consuming food or alcohol or how you're taking care of your body, but there's also this, like, are you filling in space with things that are also not serving you? Because I know for me, social media, like it can be a really wonderful connection tool. And I've met so many incredible people that I otherwise would have not met. But also, when I'm not feeling 100% about myself, it triggers the fuck out of me. It's like, well, maybe I'm not doing enough in my business. Maybe other people are doing more than me. Like, you go into this spin cycle. So like, consuming in regards to social media, or filling in the space in regards to constantly having to connect to other people, is like a toxic trait that we've all been programmed to as a society, that we have to like consciously unprogram ourselves, because at this point, like it's a brain addiction, I think,
100%. And again, talking about, I just recorded like a bunch of reels, and that was one of the things like I have as a manifestation block, but it's consuming literally content and entertainment that is not in alignment with how you want to feel or who you want to be. And it can be, like you said, like I can look to some people when I am in a good energetic headspace, and I'm like, wow, they're an expander. They are a bridge. They are what I want. They are showing me it as possible. And then when I'm in a lower headspace, a lower energy, I can look at the same exact person and feel jealous and feel insecure and feel triggered. And so, and it's our responsibility to kind of manage that, but that's why it's so important in those ways. And, the way we break that pattern is just literally like what you said, just put the fucking phone down, right? Or the same thing when I've been feeling, I never like to say I have anxiety, because I don't, right? I experience it sometimes. That being said, my eye has been twitching for 2 weeks now. And so and a lot of the times, and I grind my teeth. So like, my body will tell me things that my head maybe doesn't want to acknowledge. That's a whole other conversation. Not good for me, right? But like, I'm aware of it, but I'm like, okay, this eye twitch, which means no Dateline, no shows, as much as I want to watch You, because I love it. And like, I love like what I can't, because I can't consume that type of content when I don't like to consume it really ever, especially like the crime stuff that really happened. That's a whole other conversation, but shows that bring up those feelings in me, charged in a bad way. I have to really moderate that when my body or my head is telling me we're experiencing something we don't want to experience. And so it's like, it's my job. Just like when I wake up, it's a Monday morning. We've been gone all weekend with the kids and like eating out and takeout and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to consume potato chips today. Doesn't mean they're bad. It means my body is like, no. We've had enough. We need to eat things that are going to make you feel good. I want to view my consumption of media and entertainment in the same way. Like there's a level, and it's my responsibility to make sure like I'm moderating that. But like you said, how many folks unfortunately just aren't aware of how those things are affecting them when it's constantly coming at them?
That's I think that's such a brilliant point, is that sometimes we do have to make sure we're in the energetic space prior to consuming, prior to opening our emails, prior to watching shows. And the thing is like Heather was mentioning, your body will always tell you the truth. Your body will always tell you where you're at. Your body will always tell you how something's impacting you, where it's impacting you. And it just made me think when you were talking about like you and stuff, I took my kids to see the Titanic this weekend, because it was like the 25th anniversary. It was in 3D. I was like, oh my God, classic love story. The kids have never seen it. Perfect opportunity. We have to go. I was devastated for like hours after watching this movie. Like, I remember it being sad, but I was like, there was a scene where like in the lower class area, the mom they weren't letting people up to the lifeboats and it was starting to flood. And she kind of was putting her kids to bed while it was like flooding, like describing heaven to them. And I was like, like audibly sobbing in this movie theater. But like the whole after, I was like, God, like there's so much devastation in the world and there's so many bad things that happen. And could you imagine, like, I mean, even if you survive that, what would, like, I was on a spin cycle from this movie that I've already seen before. I know what happens. I know exactly the whole outline, but I had also simultaneously gone to a business conference that I was up way past my bedtime several nights in a row, followed by a day at Disney. Like I was go, go, go and barely slept. So I was also subjecting myself to content when I was not physically well because I was so exhausted from the weekend that I had. So for me, like I also have to make sure, like for me, sleep and like my energy are one and the same. Like my mood is highly dependent on my sleep. And so I prioritize that for me. I also have dormant mononucleosis, which means that anytime I get too tired or run down, I end up sick. I was just telling Heather before we got on, like I'm a little like under the weather today. I don't think I'm actually sick or have a full virus. I think it's just like mono kicking up where I've been exhausted for the whole last week, but that's also my fault for not being intentional about taking care of my body while I was out of town. So like you also have to make sure that you are physically in your physical is impacting your mental and your mental is impacting your energy, and it's all working together. So if you're putting yourself in a situation or consuming content that you know may have a negative impact on you and you're tired or you're moody or whatever, like you have to come within to know what the next right move is. And obviously, like, did I think Titanic was going to fuck me up that much? No, that wasn't my thing. But the thing is like, if I would have like really paid attention to my body and been like, yeah, Nicole, you've been really going and you've been really tired and you've been in a really reflective state, and maybe this isn't the right time for you to watch something that's not uplifting.
Yeah.
That might have been different. It's like that intentional time of like, what are you consuming? How is it impacting you? Is this bringing benefit to you? Or is there a better state that you could watch this in where it wouldn't make you feel like that and then hang in that energy? Does that make sense? Am I making sense today?
Oh, you're making such sense.
Okay, good.
And back to like the first, like the food, the alcohol, the other stuff. It's not saying that these things are bad, right?
No.
A ice cream sundae is not bad. A beautiful, well-crafted margarita is not bad. It is when and why we are going to these things. Just like, you know, the watching you. I love that show. All 3 seasons, watched them all. I read the books. Like, but right now it's not good for me. And so it's just something that we talk about all the time, but getting yourself in the habit of, okay, checking in. How do I feel right now? What is going on in my body? What do I need? Will that feel good to me? Yes or no? It's just getting in the habit of like kind of asking those questions. And so you can kind of, one, we're taking responsibility for our energy, right? Which is
for sure.
I feel like, but it's also, it leaves room for everything. It's not saying, no, I can't have that. No, I don't. I don't drink anymore, which obviously if you need to, you need to. Or
Right.
need to rather, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, or I can never listen to this podcast again, or I have to block them on social media. No, it just means now is not the time. It'll be there for me when it is. Right. And so it takes away all like of that. Cause when I'm a very like person, like when I tell myself no, that's when I want it more, which moves me even bigger into that space, especially when it comes to like food and drink and stuff like that. Like I don't like to be in that restrictive space with myself because that brings up a whole other issues. But when I can check in with myself and recognize it's there for me, it's available to me, but is it really what I want? Is that really how I want to interact with myself? When that's the question versus just a hard no, it's like you realize, oh no, that's not how I want to treat myself. That's not what I want right now. And it makes walking away from those things so much easier.
And it all comes back to the question, is this right for me right now?
Yeah.
Would being in a better mood help this be more entertaining than, like, I don't know what the word I'm thinking of is, but would it help me handle it better? Would it help it benefit me more if I was in a better space? Like, I have a rule of thumb, I don't drink when I'm sad. Like, if I have any rules around alcohol, it's that if I'm sad, I don't make myself sadder or relieve it temporarily because I know I'm going to get my ass handed to me the next day. Just creating little mindful rules about yourself when it comes to doing any of these things. And I am 100% on board with Heather. Like, none of them are bad. And I don't believe in things necessarily being good or bad. Is it right for you right now? And like, right now can be different this morning than it is tonight. And that's the cool part about energy, is that you can change your energy really quick. Like, we're talking about lowering your energy, but you can also raise it. You can also watch content that makes you feel really good. You can listen to music that pumps you up. You can do an exercise that gets your blood pumping and your energy cleared. You can take a bubble bath. You can do all of these things that raise your vibration as much as you can do the things that lower them. But when you become intentional and mindful about the energetic state you're already in, and you become mindful about what you're consuming, both putting physically in your body and like what you're watching, and you become more mindful about spending time with yourself in your own thoughts and your own energy, and making that a priority, that we're not just filling in space because we have all the means and technology to do so, that's where things start to change. Because again, that intuition, that being in alignment, that listening to our soul, that like being really in alignment with what the decisions are and can be, that's where things start to change for you. And if there's anything that, if you've listened to my podcast or Heather's podcast, like, we want you to be able to change your life in a way that feels easy and exciting and good for you. And we want you to do it not just mindset wise and trying to like focus on thoughts. We want you to do that energetically as well. And we want you to do that because you give a shit about your body and you're fighting for your future. And like, that's like the core message here, is like, not don't do these things, but love yourself enough to be mindful of when and if you're going to do them and how you're going to include them in your life.
That looks like a question. It's like, that's the statement, right?
Yeah.
It is the statement, getting yourself in the habit of taking time each day to just intentionally check in with yourself and ask, basically like a full body scan. How am I feeling? That's physically, mentally, energetically. Did you sleep? Are you dehydrated? Do you need a drink? Like all of these things. It doesn't need to be this. And I want to reel that back. I don't want to have this statement and overwhelm anybody thinking like, oh my gosh, that's so many questions. There's so many things to ask myself. Like, you can start in like, I'm a Taurus, I'm a gym owner. I am a very much rooted in my body type of girl, even when I don't want to be. And so you can start with the very like practical, logical, like, do I need a glass of water? Right?
Yeah.
Did I get enough hours of sleep? And like, it's not like you can turn back the time and go back to sleep for 4 more hours, but you can say, okay, maybe today isn't the day to write that email, or can I reschedule this meeting, or, just start shifting things around and letting it be easy for yourself. And then it's just a rinse and repeat thing. Do the same thing tomorrow. What do I need? And it's going to change every day, but that's a beautiful thing because it's going to change every day.
And the more you listen, the more there's things to listen to. Like, I really, truly believe that when our light is on intuitively, it's on. And the more you're listening, the more the universe will give you to listen to, the more your soul will amp up and you'll hear it more. So starting with those small tasks, starting with that glass of water, starting with the walk in the morning, starting with just sitting outside and viewing sunlight. There's like incredible science around just viewing sunlight in the morning. And it doesn't even have to be sunny. It just has to be, you just have to be outside with your eyes open. Like, how easy is that to do? You can make small choices that will allow you to be in alignment to hear the bigger choices, but you have to kind of stop distracting from yourself, and you have to stop going through the motions of doing, and you have to be mindful of like paying more attention and creating time to pay attention. Because I think a lot of, especially our generation, Heather, I think a lot of us were brought up with like people pleasing, self-abandonment stuff, that we're just starting to get back into the habit of like, oh, I matter too. Like, it's not just this self-sacrificing thing that I do. Like, my thoughts, my feelings, my opinions, the things that I need are just as valid and important as the things I'm giving to everybody else. And so this may be a little bit of a practice for you in listening to yourself and to create any time. And I think like my rule of thumb is 2 minutes. If you want to start something, start it for 2 minutes a day. Commit commit to yourself, be consistent for 2 minutes a day. And if you want to move that up to 3 to 5 to 10, cool. But start with 2 and just do 2 for 5 to 7 days in a row. And then you can do more. But it's process of coming back within and coming back into alignment. But you also just have to be mindful about what you're taking in and how it's impacting you, because a lower vibration will keep you from your destiny, as like dramatic as that sounds. It'll keep you from making the changes that you really, really soulfully need and desire. And it will keep the things that are meant from you out of reach. I think, I don't think you really truly miss anything that's for you, but I think you can get so fucking distracted that it can come and sit there before you actually grasp onto it, if that makes sense.
And so I mean, we're disagreeing on this one. I do think you can miss things that are for you if you're just unwilling to grasp them, right? Like, and then we could go down a hyperbole of like, well, were they even for you? Like, yes, obviously, like we can come to any answer that we want. For me, I need a bit of a stern talking to. I'm somebody who has to really like David Goggins. I know some people like they hear his stuff and they're like, nope, he's way too harsh, too whatever. Yeah. Where for me, that's what I need. That's how I interact with myself. Like if anybody follows my content, like I used to be called like tough love. And I definitely think I've reeled it back a bit, but the reason that is because that's what I needed, right? Yeah. I needed the stern talking to, I needed the shaking by the shoulders of like, wake up, bitch, stop doing this. And so I had to program myself in a way of, no, this can miss you if you're not willing to step up and take the responsibility. If you're not willing to treat yourself better, this is not going to be available to you. If you're so comfortable in your bullshit, you're not going to have more because it's not going to wait around for you. Right. And I think that's important. And I think that's cool because different people are going to have different ways of viewing things. And so it's like, I'm a fan of like the stern talking to yourself and the self-questioning to yourself and really being honest of like, okay, well, what do I need? And sometimes what we need is accountability and discipline, but we're the only person who can give that to us. Right. But when we are the people holding ourselves accountable and when we are the person creating our discipline, like we are also creating our magic. And like, that's when everything can kind of like fall in line. And so maybe getting on that path takes a little bit of work, but once you're there, if you get in the habit of, like you said, just 2 minutes a day, checking in with yourself. Well, guess what? Even if you step off a little bit, you're going to get your happy little ass right back on really, very quickly once you kind of gotten yourself on the straight and narrows of everything.
Yeah. So I'm right with you. I love somebody yelling at me in the morning. That's what I listen to when I listen to those motivational speeches in the morning. Like if you go and you type in YouTube, you just type in motivational speeches, it will be somebody like Denzel fucking Washington yelling at you, like, get together, get like, and I do thrive off of that because I'm a self-love girly. And the thing is that sometimes self-love isn't just, you're doing great. It's, you can do better, and that's not putting yourself down. I think that's like, it's not putting yourself down to say you can do better. It's recognizing your potential. And I think that's loving is, having a good combination of compassion and ass kicking. So I'm totally with you on that. Like, I think that having a good balance of compassion and ass kicking is such a great way to level up your life, because I know for me, like I was saying earlier, I had quite the experience where I had a lot of constructive criticism and people kind of looking at my business and tearing it apart, but showing me also how to rebuild it. And I had to like humble myself a little bit of like, yeah, you know what, Nicole, you might be doing well, but you don't know everything. Like you don't have all the connections. You haven't made it to certain levels that you've wanted to make it to. Like you have to be willing to take that. And I think that's true for ourselves too, is we have to be willing to take that constructive criticism. And that's the important part, is being willing to have it be constructive rather than just criticism.
Yeah.
Having it know your potential and ask yourself, am I pushing as hard as I can push? Am I taking the steps necessary to change my life? Do I have a plan in play? Like asking those questions are going to be really important for you moving up with this energetic vibration, moving into your best self, putting yourself in alignment. Again, it all has to be intentional. So yeah, I love this conversation. I think it's going to speak to a lot of people today.
Yeah, me too. Always.
Any final thoughts before we close up?
I think it really just comes down to first and foremost, knowing yourself, right? But also understanding that just like energy, your needs are going to change. And so, yeah, some days you're going to need to be the absolute softest version with yourself. You are going to need to accept the bare minimum from yourself and let you, relax, lay on the couch, rebuild, rest, restore, all those things. But then other times it's going to be like Denzel Washington, let me show you how great I am. Like really being the person to hold yourself accountable. And, you talk about criticism. We only take criticism from people that we respect, because otherwise, it's not, it just kind of hopefully falls off of us if we don't respect them, if they're not doing what we aspire to do or in that realm. That's why it's so important for us to build habits that help us respect ourselves, because then we can have those conversations and say, honestly, okay, Heather, you're not holding yourself accountable here. And it's not coming from a place of bitch, get your shit together, but it's also coming from a place of bitch, get your shit together because you deserve it.
because you deserve it. Yes.
Because it's just the energy behind it and just holding space for both and doing what you need with it.
Yeah, that's so important. And when we're talking about, like I said, I want to see everybody here changing their lives, and I want to see everybody here making decisions that are in their best and highest good. And I want to be seeing everybody living in their best energetic state, because when we're talking about frequency, we're talking about mood. I mean, that's as simple as I can put it. We're talking about mood. We're talking about how your physical body feels as you walk through the day, how your heart and your mind and your soul feel as you walk through the day. And like, why would you want anything less than fucking stellar and light and free and this light energy and having things feel easy because you're light? So we're having these harder conversations, not because we're criticizing you, the listener, because you're doing all these things wrong, but because we know that if you're able to do it a little bit differently, that life will be easier and that you'll be able to make the necessary changes that are going to positively change the trajectory of your life. And like, again, we love you. We want that because we love you, not because we want you to sit there and think about all the things you did wrong.
No, it's the highest form of love. It's saying this is your potential, like how amazing that you're capable of all these amazing things, and how amazing that you have the ability to do all these amazing things. And we just want to be your cheerleaders and watch you do it.
Yeah. Where can people find you, work with you?
HeatherMaio.com. It's Mayo, MAIO, not like the spread. Better than mustard, as your husband point.
And you can find me at NicoleEaton.com or TikTok and Instagram, NicoleEaton.xo. Thanks for listening. I'm working on growing this podcast to its full potential this year. If you feel this was valuable, I'd love for you to share or leave me a positive review. Share with somebody who needs to hear it, screenshot and tag me on Instagram, and make sure you keep an eye out for my latest book, Rock Your Comeback, The Down-to-Earth Guide to Reclaiming Your Power. Hoping to have it in your hands soon. I'd love to connect with you, so make sure to give me a follow on Instagram or TikTok at NicoleEaton.xo. Thanks for listening to the Rock Your Soul podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on the world. Now go step back into your power. The world's been waiting for you.